Welcome to Talking Drupal. This is Wednesday, January 29th, 2015. And today we're talking about galleries. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
We are recording a day. I said record on Wednesdays. Today is Thursday, right?
It is. Things a little bit off this week.
Yeah, we thrown off by a day, but here we are. So welcome, Jason Palmental from HW Design. How are you?
I am well, a little bit under the weather, and at least all dug out from our little storm soiree.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been kind of a weird week. You know, I mean, everybody locally, was just completely shut down. But even, just out in New Haven, they didn't get nearly as much snow as we got. So it's kind of a weird one.
I was down in North Kingstown this morning, and they didn't. I don't even think they had a foot of snow down there.
Really?
So it was just 45 minutes down the road was quite a big difference.
Wow.
Really, that's surprising.
Yeah, I think it just like all these storms these days, it just matters just about where you are could make a whole lot of difference. Like the difference between us and Nick getting 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, we got over 30 inches, and they're still not finished plowing 2 days later. So we're expecting another storm tomorrow and a big one on Monday. So it's gonna be fun.
Well,
I talked to one of my buddies down in New York City, and he's like, I was like, "How'd you fare through the storm?" And he's like, "Dude, we didn't get any snow." And I was like, "Oh wow!" And then right after I was talking to him, I heard somebody saying I guess somebody was complaining that the meteorologists can never manage to get it right, and the person they were talking to was like, "Well, it is a weather forecast. It's not a weather guarantee," which I thought was rather profound because we're always blaming the weathermen for being able to go to work and be wrong most of the time, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess it is just a forecast. They're taking their best guess, right?"
Yeah,
I think being in the web design and development industry, we should probably remember that we're wrong a lot too. We just have to fix it.
It's easier to fix our mistakes.
The big difference is we're not announcing it to 5 million people.
Yeah. Well, unless you've got a good Twitter following. But
I'd probably rather have the weather forecast be wrong in that direction than say, oh yeah, we're gonna get an inch and get 35.
Yeah.
It's a bit different.
Yeah.
So also joining us is Grizzly Adams from
the other Grizzly Adams.
Yes, we get two of the hosts growing these beards. John is more Grizzly Adams like. We're getting a lot of static from somebody.
On zipper, I think, on the mic.
Is it me?
Yep. Yeah, it's you.
I am wiggling a bit. Hold on. Is that better?
Yes. Much better. Thank you.
All right. Well, just let me know if it happens again.
All right. So welcome, John. And I'm not going to let you say anything else because you already did. And welcome, Nick. So I want to make sure we get our introductions out of the way.
Good morning.
So we're talking about, is everyone's kids back in school, by the way? Schools open everywhere? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's a few towns that were closed again today.
Yeah, I saw.
Strange, huh? And Jason's daughter's principal made a big hit on Facebook.
That's very true.
His announcement of schools being closed. If you haven't seen it and you're on Facebook, do a search for Moses Brown school closed. Probably you'd find it.
It was pretty amazing because they covered it on the Today Show, on Good Morning America.
Oh, did they really?
TV. I mean, this went everywhere.
Oh, so it went viral. I didn't realize that.
Oh, BuzzFeed. It was on the E! homepage.
Wow.
They actually covered it 2 days, and they showed it 2 days in a row on the Today Show.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yeah, and they did this video over the course. I mean, it was written by the communications director and filmed and produced. The chorus director sang it, and the head of school, performed, acted, and they had been working on this for about a week and a half, and then basically on Sunday saw what the forecast was like for the coming couple days, and all right, we got to finish.
Right.
And it just came together, and it was just perfect.
Your hard-earned tuition dollars at work, right there.
And whatever, something like that go. My hat is off to the communications director there. That was a fantastic piece of work, and man, they will get a lot out of that, I'm sure.
They'll also get a letter from Disney, I'm sure.
Probably. They probably already have.
Yeah.
I hear Disney's lawyers are pretty vicious about that sort of thing.
Especially when it shows up on the Today Show, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about galleries.
Sure.
Who needs a gallery? Jeez.
Oh, everyone loves putting up loads of photos.
Yeah, they're overrated. So how many of you guys cringe when you get galleries? Like, just in general.
I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not so much anymore.
I wouldn't say cringe. Cringe is a really strong word. I just, I never really, I don't know, I guess I never really minded galleries. I just thought they were kind of like a requirement.
Well, in the Drupal 5 days, it was
painful.
It was painful, yeah, downright painful. There's no way around it. Drupal 6 made some improvements, but in Drupal 7, we've finally gotten to the point where making a gallery is depending on the specific requirements, and we'll talk about different things that change, but depending on the specific requirements, is a very simple, painless process. It's really just a matter of finding a workflow that meets your client's needs best and the display that does.
I think that was what was always the most frustrating thing for me, was that there was never this sort of like one solution. They always felt like everybody asked for a gallery, and you want to be able to say, oh, point to this module, and this has everything. Because there were always a bunch of these kind of like external service type things that just did galleries. But having one that was really well integrated into Drupal always felt like more pain than it should be. And 6 got better a lot. And I found one module that I was happy with and used most of the time. And in 7, we've actually gotten to the point where we generally don't use a module at all. We actually have our own way of doing it that we put together that we found to be a little simpler and easier for the end user. And I think people have a tendency to ask for more than they will actually use. And sometimes just simpler is better.
It's funny because I say cringe, you guys immediately think technology. When I say cringe, I'm thinking it is the one place on the website that the customer can make such a mess out of a great-looking website and totally screw it up the minute they have access to just be putting stuff in a gallery, and that's actually where my cringe comment was coming from.
Well,
if you're talking about iPhone photos being uploaded,
but I think that's where the technology helps keep that in check.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, sure, but I think that's really the making sure that it's, because they all want to do it.
Right.
But making sure that it's done in a way that doesn't compromise, the user experience by having like huge file uploads, because we can take advantage of Drupal resizing the images when they get uploaded. Making it like drag and drop so they can rearrange things and pick a good sort of like quote unquote cover photo. I think those things are what help keep it from kind of ruining the experience.
I think it's really also like you can put as much as you want into it. Jason was talking about earlier Drupal 6 using a module for a photo gallery. I've actually never used an actual module for a photo gallery. I've always just used views and the built-in features of Drupal with additional modules for different pieces of functionality. But to Jason's point, I think you can kind of build in as much as you want to it. An example I come back to is selecting or cropping certain photos and showing certain displays of photos, because I think that's the biggest way people kind of mess up or detract from the style of their site is by just uploading a whole bunch of like random photos. And in Drupal you can control, especially with views, you can control the sizes of the images and that sort of thing. So like the neatness of it will be intact. But I think a lot of times the quality of the photos or the style of the photos can detract too.
So before we jump into some of the functional and technical stuff here, I just want to touch on a couple more things. And when there's a requirement in a site to have a gallery, and every website has images, right? There is sort of in my mind when I say the word gallery is a little bit different necessarily than in some images on pages. Like if you have a home page that might have a hero image or something, at what point do you kind of consider that a gallery? And what concerns do you have about, well, which I started to mention, of customers being able to have access to those things? Because a lot of times on the home page of a site, the image is carefully selected at design time for a whole lots of reasons. Color, the message it sends, and what do you do with your customers to either not allow them to change that image without some guidance, which I've done, because it's an important one, but on other pages change all the images you want, but this one you're not going to change just for anyone. What do you guys think about that?
Before we do that, can we just clarify by what we're talking about by gallery? Because I think that there are a couple of different meanings for that word out there. When I say gallery, I'm thinking of a page with multiple thumbnail images on it that people can go through and look at. But other people might think of a gallery as something like a flex slider that would be on your home page, or a color box of some sort that you can kind of scroll through images. So I think we need to clarify which one we are referring to.
Yeah, that tends to be how I think of it, like a collection of images in a slider or a carousel or a pool of images from which you choose a few to use on the home page, for example. I tend to not think of that as a gallery. I tend to think of gallery as, like destination page. Say, here's a gallery of images of this event, this place, this thing, this classroom, this whatever. And so we treat those things a little bit differently, where for homepage images, we'll have specific requirements. We'll add help text so people know that it's this specific content type and this is how they control what goes into that view. But then, for example, we've got one client school in San Francisco that has a new building that's in progress, and they keep a gallery up to date there to show, excuse me, how how progress is moving along. So that one is a gallery in that sense, where it's a page that you can go to and you see a collection of images.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I consider both of them galleries, but like you said, they do have different considerations. As far as, homepage, being able to swap a homepage images in galleries, it really depends on the client. It really depends on the needs of their business, on how technically savvy they are, or even artistic they are. Some clients can really handle I suppose I'd call it the responsibilities, or the design aesthetics of their website, and are able to swap out images that look good and fit what they need. And other clients really just aren't able to. So depending on what their business needs and what their technical expertise is, it really molds what kind of control they have over the site.
So if we let's keep this conversation to the definition that John and Jason are most comfortable with, is saying basically a collection of images that you're sharing, usually at a destination page. So what are some of the parameters on putting those pages together? Some of the considerations?
Well, from the content creator's standpoint, I think they want to be able to create a gallery and upload a bunch of images and arrange them, give it a title, and publish it. And to do that, generally, what they're hoping for, in most cases, is the ability to drag and drop a whole bunch of images, not click and update them one at a time. Because usually the use case is, I want to create a gallery about this event, so I want to create the gallery, I want to select all these images from my phone or whatever, and I'm going to drop them in this folder, and then I want to just be able to hit publish. And so that's what we try and optimize for.
Well, I think even that depends a little bit. I mean, because you have if you have a methodology that works like that, like we have one event, a bunch of pictures are going to be generated, and we're going to post those together, then it makes sense to be able to create new content types. But I have several clients where they want a gallery that showcases some work, but usually, it might be a home organizer. So they have a couple before pictures, a couple after pictures. Doesn't necessarily warrant each one warrant its own destination page, but collectively they want to be able to have them together. So there's different ways about going about that. Do you just create a content type and they just keep editing the same page, or do you let them upload a couple images at a time? I mean, it really is a question of workflow and how they gather pictures, if they're related together or not.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I mean, I think in general, in the way, like, we've done like gallery as part of a portfolio where it's like a project, and then like we have a landscape architect as a client, and we wanted him to be able to upload images and designate specific images as before or after, so that way we could kind of put a little banner over them and say, like, here's the before picture. And those were content type of gallery and content type of gallery item, so that they could be individually flagged. Now you could also do that in a field collection, so that you keep it on a single node. And we've actually most of the time focused on a single content type approach lately, where the gallery is a node and it has a single file like an image upload on it with an unlimited number of items, and then we present that in a gallery format on when you view that node. So
Jason, to back up there for a minute, so you have a content type called gallery, so for every gallery there's one node.
Yep.
And then inside the node you have a multi-field or a multi-field collection where they can add as many as they want to that, any number of pictures they want to that single gallery.
Right, and then you can drag and drop to reorder them.
Yep.
Now previously we had used the node gallery module, which creates two different content types, the gallery and the gallery item, and then a view that brings them together. That allows you to sort, you can rotate images, you can select the cover image, you can create a gallery of galleries. All of that stuff was pretty easy, and it was the best solution I found in Drupal 6. In Drupal 7, with entities and file entities and field collections and all that sort of thing, it was pretty easy for us to just use a single content type, so the editing process for the user was really, really simple, and the construction of it for us was likewise much, much simpler with less overhead, fewer additional modules and complexity.
Yeah, I'd say the vast majority of the time when I'm creating a gallery now, it's a content type, it has a title, has a description, and then it has a multi-value image field where people, as you say, can just upload an image and then reorder it if they need to, or remove an image if they need to, and then I use views to pull it together, and usually something like Flex Slider to make it, or Color Box to make it a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. In the early days of Drupal 7, I also used a module called Gallery Formatter, which kind of handles, creating appropriate thumbnail sizes and slider sizes, and integrates with Color Box pretty seamlessly. But again, it's one of those things where it's become much easier just to generate it yourself and keep a feature handy, or just build it custom each time than use a module, because then you're not constrained.
Yeah, I think definitely agree with that. I looked at a couple of those gallery modules for the first gallery that I had to do, and I always went back to views and being able to use a view and get the functionality that I needed from views with Colorbox or FlexSlider or one of those additional modules. So I definitely agree that a view is a better way to go.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the layout options a little bit. So it would depend on the number of images per gallery, how many galleries people are going to have, the different layouts you may want to put a gallery in. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's say someone has a few galleries with lots of pictures versus lots of galleries with few pictures. How would you address those differently from a layout perspective and the functionality that you give to the website visitor?
I think it really depends on what the user or what the client is looking for, what kind of effect they're looking for. I think either of those models, I mean, obviously, when you say it, the more images you have lends itself better to a bunch of thumbnails that the user can select and scroll between using a color box or something like that, as opposed to like the larger image with thumbnails. But I honestly think you could go either way. I've seen a larger image with thumbnails used for a gallery that had like 100 images in it. I think
you also keep saying color box. Everyone might not know what that is.
So Colorbox is, well, I'm going to compare it to another module. Colorbox is similar to Lightbox.
That's helpful.
Which is not helpful at all. So
I'm going to define it by giving you the definition.
So basically, Lightbox. Let's talk about Lightbox first. Lightbox is a lightweight kind of Lightbox tool. Basically, it adds a.
You can't use the word in the definition.
It's a big image overlaying the page behind it with a semi-transparent, usually a gray overlay on the page, so it lets you zoom into a larger version of the photo.
It's a modal interface for viewing images.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, without leaving the page, driven by jQuery, that sort of thing. So
key point, right?
Yes.
It's JavaScript driven.
So Colorbox is basically Lightbox on steroids and becoming more of the norm, I would say, for implementing that sort of functionality. So by getting back to my main point, I think it really matters what the key here is, not so much which layout you use, but really what you're trying to get the user to do or what you're trying to achieve visually. That's just a matter of opinion, I guess.
I think there are some points there, though. I know it depends on what the customer wants, but I think oftentimes we have to guide the customer. So if someone is looking at a gallery that has 100 images, it's very difficult for someone to consider even using that and not seeing some sort of thumbnail or have some other guidance to them other than an arrow on the left-hand, right-hand side. I mean, you don't know how far you're in. You don't know. I mean, that's a lot to manage.
Right. My thinking there was that the larger image would have some sort of indicator, 1 of 100, or have maybe 99 little thumbnails under, or 100 little thumbnails underneath it.
And that's where integrating with views really gives you a lot of flexibility. So you can add paging, you can add the count, record X of Y. All of those things can be integrated when you use that module, Colorbox integrated with views. And so that does give you the ability to fine-tune the experience, tie into image styles, add paging so that, if you know that they tend to have a very high number of images, you could go with like a thumbnail grid of so many results per page, and then when you click on any one of them to zoom in, you're only sort of color box navigating through the ones on that page.
Right.
So that way you don't overwhelm somebody and try and download. Because when you do this, most of the time it's loading that larger asset anyway. So you have to be really careful about doing that and downloading 50 2-megabyte images in the background while they're trying to browse through this stuff. So you want to tie it into something that's going to be sensible, and Views gives you a ton of flexibility with that.
How about considerations for a responsive site in this world of galleries?
The one thing I do like about Flex Slider rather is that it is built to handle responsive layouts out of the box. So that's a nice feature to have. You basically drop Flex Slider in there, and it gives you that larger image with the sliding effect right out of the box. So you don't really have to worry about the responsiveness there. But with other solutions like a kind of build your own gallery with a view, you definitely have to think of responsive and how that's going to be handled.
That's one of the main reasons why I stopped using Gallery Formatter. It isn't responsive, and it forces every image to be whatever the largest width is of all the images. It's one of the more inflexible gallery modules out there, and that's why I use, as John said, Flex Slider is pretty responsive out of the box, both with how it interacts, like it does very well with touchscreens, as well as resizing.
Yeah, we ended up going with on some of the larger number of image gallery situations we saw with schools with an image style that was a scale and crop. So it would give us something that was essentially square, and then we would have the output in the view for the thumbnails just be, we'd use semantic views and make it a list of articles essentially, and we would use an nth child selector so that on different media queries we could say it's going to be 2 across, 3 across, 4 across, and then wrap it and clear it accordingly so that you could have a thumbnail and any caption that you want to display and still maintain a nice responsive grid that reflows really well, rather than using the actual grid output, which is a table.
Something Jason said there I want to expand upon a little bit is he said that he was resizing the images using scale and crop, which is a normal technique when you're building a gallery in Views. You want your images to be all the same size, makes it easier for the user. There are modules out there that will allow you to select the crop that you use, so you make sure you get the piece of the image that you want. By default, Drupal's selecting or image cache is selecting crop or rescale and crop tool. Kind of just takes a random segment.
It's not random. It actually it just scales down to one dimension and then crops the other one.
Yeah.
And you can choose where to focus, but
not by default. By default, it's centered.
but when you're doing scale and crop, you get to choose which corner, top, middle, bottom, middle, or
out of the box. Actually, you can't.
I think you can.
Yeah.
But you're making the decision for all the images. It's not per image.
Yeah, that's the point. Like it's one for all. John's module allows you to choose it individually.
My point there was that there are modules out there that will allow you, when you upload the image, to select the crop that you're going to use on that image, which is nice in a gallery because it goes back to our original question of like how you can get the most interesting stuff or stuff that makes sense for your style into the gallery.
Well, and that also does come back to typical usage. We had, so that works really well when you have a small number of galleries and they're being very considered about images when they add them. And on the schools, what we tend to see is we have lots of content authors who want maximum speed in adding the galleries, because they tend to want to do things like, okay, we had this great event in our classroom, I want to upload images that, these 30 images in this gallery, and I just want to drag and drop and fire it off. And so choosing a crop on each one of those, even adding captions, they just didn't even want. I thought this was kind of a bummer, because we put a lot of effort into doing nice overlays with the captions and all this other stuff, and it was basically not used. It is used in other circumstances, and the stuff that we did for Yale, they actually were much more considered with it, so that the overlays and captions and all that other stuff actually worked really well.
I think that brings up a somewhat interesting point too, is that while building image galleries have gotten easier, people have grown accustomed to using Facebook's interface, which is unrealistic at the scale most of our clients work at, to put it mildly. People don't understand what having 2,000 engineers working on a site can afford to put together. On a site that has the world's largest image database, they can afford to put a lot of these niceties in. So having things like just drag and drop somewhere on the screen and have it automatically ask you if you want to add an album or something is not something that we're able to do easily with Drupal. But
true. But I mean, I would want to stress that with a very small number of modules, you can put together an incredibly polished thing from the perspective of people who use these systems. We may see the limitations or flaws, but in general, combining PL upload, views, flex slider, and just basic CCK image field, you can have drag and drop uploading and automatic creation of that gallery with a flex slider and it's responsive and it's swipeable, and you can drag and drop to reorder the images all in from a single edit view. So from for the content creator's perspective, we've actually gotten the biggest distance to that really polished thing. It's not quite there, but we can put this together in a couple hours versus 1,000 engineers and months.
Jason, does it allow you to tag other people in the image? Just kidding.
You actually made me start to think about that.
I'm just kidding.
Thanks.
So let's. I just want to roll back. There's a lot of stuff been thrown out here in the last 5 minutes. John kept referring to there's modules you can use to help you focus on images. There's modules you can use, but let's give some of those.
Image field focus.
Yeah. So I think he was referring to. I think it's called field image focus. Is it? No, it's image field focus.
Well, there's several.
Okay, no. Episode 31, we talked about that module, by the way.
Responsive images. That was what we were talking about there?
No, this was the module of the week when we were talking about SEO. So, So it's image field focus is the module. Episode 31, there's some notes on our website about that. Is there something else, John, that you were thinking of?
There are a couple of them out there. Okay. I've used EPSA crop, which is just a simple kind of cropping tool.
Okay.
If you type Drupal image crop into Google, you get a bunch of different stuff. It's kind of dependent on what you're trying to do, and if it integrates with the image field. So you might. Image field focus is a good one. You might want to go with something a little simpler, but it's kind of one of those things where you got to try the one you're looking at and figure out what's going to work.
Also, you want to be careful about what's required. Like there used to be another multi-file uploader that required Flash, and then there's another one. PL upload uses HTML5.
Yeah, so I wanted
through with those modules.
I definitely wanted to talk about that multi-file upload because you're using pupload. That has started using HTML5.
Yep. Yeah, it does not
Okay.
require Flash.
I've also used in the past multi-upload file field, which also has a multi-upload image field widget. And basically what that does is it actually works with the current file field to enable it with the HTML HTML5 multiple upload tag. So there's limited browser support there. You just need to be aware of.
Right.
But it's kind of streamlines it down. I know P-upload can be a little bit cumbersome as far as selecting the images and how it handles those images on the back end. This actually works with the image field or the file field to allow for that field to just accept a multiple file selection as opposed to a single file selection.
That's how PL upload is working now.
Okay.
It is just like an add-on essentially to a basic image uploader. So it is the same field. I think basically it's the same way to get to that destination. I haven't looked at that one that you were mentioning though. It'd be nice to see some options, especially for multiple files as well.
So when you use PL upload, it is basically a shortcut for a multi-field.
Yep.
It's generating. You pick the 15 files and it creates 15 entries.
Yep.
On your side. So if someone, like for an image field, you would often want the user to pay attention to some of the attributes of the image itself. They would then go back and edit.
Right. Right, which is the same process that you have to go through.
Yep.
You select the image and then you hit upload, and then you would be presented with the thumbnail of the image and the text fields to add in alt text or title text. This would end up working the same way. Drag 15 of them in, hit start to upload all of them, and then it would give you that typical Drupal presentation with drag and drop handles to reorder and all of that. So that was how we went about doing this. So in the creation of it, PL upload was actually the only add-on module. It's a basic content type with title, the body field for a description, and an image field with unlimited values, and then PL upload to allow multiple. So that gave us the gallery itself, the grouping, and then all of the images. So if you simply view that node, it'll show you all of them. What we did was take away the display of it and then add in our own sort of specific way of doing it, which was, in our case, an attached view that pulled in the images that were attached and formatted it in a way that we wanted to present. Large image in a slider with thumbnails underneath that you could click on.
Have you had a customer request that they can use a mobile phone to real-time add images to a gallery? Has that been a requirement for anyone?
We haven't yet. We'd love to, but we haven't yet.
I once had a client that was doing posting from events. They were running events and they wanted to do images, take live shots of the event and post them up. And actually said that the Drupal default way of doing it was not that bad. She was able to add an image from her phone, and it was really interesting because I didn't even think that it was possible. But she said that she figured out some way to do it where it worked, and she was happy with it. So
that's great. I honestly don't know how.
I don't either. I don't know if the file selection widget just went to her image gallery and said, okay, what images do you want to upload?
The operating system is the one that handles the file upload request. So
right, but I didn't think that it actually worked in mobile browsers.
Oh yeah, it's just it just brings you to the file.
Yeah.
Well, I had never tried it.
So we did an app last year for a customer that you could. It was for a jewelry company where you would upload an image, you could resize it inside of a locket. So you would resize the image and have it fit in a heart or an oval.
Did they then put that locket in their pocket?
And the idea was, and then the customer could print out. They had their own locket that they bought, and then they could print it out so on their own printer,
nice.
so it would be the exact size that fit in their locket. But and this was a Drupal app, and what the interesting thing was is it worked. We made it responsive, and it worked on a phone. So if you opened up the app and you hit the upload image, it would pop up in the phone browser. Do you want to select from your photo gallery or take a picture now? And if you took a picture now, it would work exactly the same way. It would upload to the gallery, and they could resize it on their phone, and then go from there. So.
Cool.
It sort of works natively.
That's pretty neat because really even a year ago, mobile browsers did not work with file uploads. It just wasn't a thing. It's pretty nice that it's come along that far that quickly. So I remember we were discussing it not even a year ago, and we're looking at what could you do in a browser, what could you do in PhoneGap, what required a native app. And it was, in order to get it working from a phone, it was a real series of hacks to do it. I mean, that said, one of the things that we didn't really talk about was how you might use other services that are natively available and tied into apps, like Flickr or Instagram or whatever, and use feeds to bring it back in and create a gallery on your website. So you actually could look at other services or ways to do that, and then make the display of it on the website the gallery that you're really focusing on.
What's an example of that?
Well, I used to do this with Instagram on my old website. So I had a Flickr. I would post on Instagram, and at that point there were no feeds from Instagram. So I posted the Flickr, and I used a Flickr feed, and I ran that on cron. I imported it as content, and then I created a gallery view so you could look at all my Instagram photos. So I could, style them the way I want, and just have it an automatically sort of updating way to see my posts. That was all sort of before you could do it on the Instagram website, so it's less of a need. But
it's actually an Instagram module.
we're using it on the Yale website,
which works really well. It works very similarly to the Twitter module.
Yeah.
And you can build out your own views based on that information and all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think it's important to bring these things up because you really want to tailor the workflow to what works for your client. And if they tend to use something like Flickr, for example, so that multiple people can post to a single account, you could work with them to basically create galleries based on tags. So they could tag everything with a given event and have that stuff import and present that as a gallery on the website. So there are a lot of different ways that you can make it easier for people to create content and display it, and the creation and the display of it really can be two different processes, and you can really sort of streamline that because it's pretty easy to have lots of people contribute to one or the other. You want to go with the one with the least friction, and sometimes a good native app workflow is really simple and people are really used to it. It's what they're doing all the time. Just give them the tools to help bring that right back into the website and then display it in the same consistent manner. So we have that stuff going on the Yale Graduate School site. In Student Life, they have their Instagram feed coming in.
Any other topics about anything else about galleries you want to mention? We've sort of gone through most of our list here of things we wanted to touch on.
I think we've exhausted the topic.
Well,
at least for this show.
I think we've focused really only on photos, but I think it's important to keep in mind that could just as easily be a gallery of videos. Mm-hmm. Files. I mean, gallery, images and videos, probably the most visual way that you would typically want to do that. But bringing in references to YouTube or Vimeo stuff, you could still have those combined in a single view.
And interestingly enough, a lot of the modules and approaches that we talked about will actually work with the YouTube field or the file field or any other sort of field video interface that you you build for the admin user. So just because we're talking about image galleries doesn't mean it couldn't be a video gallery or Instagram gallery or a file directory.
Yeah, and something that happens really commonly is an image with an overlay, with some text overlaid, that links to a detail page about products or something, about the specific product or specific event or something, and that with views and Flux Slider, that becomes very, very easy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because you can get into something that's almost infographic-like, where you have the photo and then the caption with a little colored overlay and, an icon to indicate that you can zoom in on it and links. I mean, all of those, anything that you can pull together in a view, you can display as a gallery item, essentially.
The possibilities are endless. Be as creative as you like, Internet.
Yeah, it's a pretty good tool, and Flux Slider gives you, again, we're getting more into the slider territory than maybe the gallery territory, but it allows you to do things like delay on slide, delay or stop the slideshow when you hover or tap, or it gives you navigation. I mean, it's fairly it's fairly configurable.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, it's sort of built-in capabilities to be able to do row of thumbnails, row of dots, previous next arrows, text overlays, all that stuff is pretty straightforward. Excuse me.
All right, let's move on to a module of the week, which is file field source. Tell us about it, John.
So I'm going to do my best storytelling here with a story. I had a customer or a client come to me last week, and he said, "You know what? We're using IMCE. We're using image browser to add images to our body fields, and that's working out great." He's like, "But for our homepage slideshows and our header images, we have these image fields where we have to upload a file." He said, "If the file's already on the server, can't we just reuse the file as opposed to having to re-upload it into this field?" And I said, "Well, yeah, there's got to be a module out there that we can use to do that." And here enters file field source. So basically, what this module does is it gives you a bunch of different places that you can get your image for your image field. So by default, out of the box, an image or a file field allows you to upload a file or an image. That's it. What this module does is it adds links to that field that allow you to select whether you want that field source to come from an uploaded file, the file browser. So if you're using IMCE, it'll open an IMCE file browser, and you can look at the files on the server. You can also reference an existing file. So if you had a file on there that wasn't in IMCE on your site, you could reference that. Or you could reference a remote URL. So if you were like, "Oh, I found this Google image that I want to reference," you could do that. So it just opens up that file field to give you a lot more options of reusing a file that's already on the server or somewhere else, as opposed to creating duplicates of the same file.
Does it hotlink remote URLs, or does it download them?
That's a great question. I think the remote URLs are probably hot linked. I don't think that they're downloaded, but again, you would have to test that out. I do not know.
I'd be surprised if it did that.
Yeah,
that'd be a problem, right? Because how could you then be using your image styles and stuff on them?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
John, how is the interface if you decide to use this and select from a file that's already on your server? Does it give you thumbnails to look at, or is it just giving you like a listing of file names?
So if you're using the IMCE browser, it's in that format.
Right.
So it's I don't know. I have not used it without IMCE. So
okay.
I imagine it's just a text field, and you have to put the reference in.
I don't know that. I don't know. I have not used it like that.
And at the beginning of the show, you said you were the ultimate expert in this module of the week. That's not true.
Just another failure on my part.
We're just looking for another bus to throw you under, John.
Here comes the file field source bus.
Look out!
Here, I'll save you the back strain. I'll just step out in front of it.
It does sound like an interesting module to look at.
Well, it's really great. In one of the issues that comes up quite frequently, at least for me, is reuse of files. And before some of these modules came out, your options were to just re-upload the files. And
Right.
as far as the server goes, that adds duplicate files to the server. It adds size to the server, takes up disk space. So a lot of modules are out there, IMCE and this module, to help you reduce that and be able to reuse those properties as opposed to duplicating them. So that's great.
Yeah.
So
No, go
I
ahead.
was just saying, not to go down a huge tangent, but a quick poll, I guess. How often? Because I know that the media module and I know IMCE is really about reusing files so that you don't have multiple copies. But how often do you have clients that are reusing a lot of files or a lot of images?
Where I have it often is images happens occasionally, but it's really a lot of times it's files. There's documentation that applies to two pages of the site, and we actually built an intranet for a healthcare provider, and their reuse of files was crazy. There was so much reuse of like, oh, this department needs to have this file, but this department also needs to have it. So it's situational. As everything is, it's situational. But I do see it a lot more than not. Let's put it that way.
So Nick, I have some great use cases for that. Like we have a lot of benefit platform websites, and so it's a website where it provides access to benefits from vendors and merchants, and you have merchant logos that are used all over the place. When you deal with hotels, hotels often give you stock photography of inside of room shots, and you use those images over and over and over again. So I think there's lots of use cases for using images repetitively in one website.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I find more often than not, it's maybe one image that gets used a few times or one file that gets used a few times, but there's not a lot. The hotel, and this is just maybe a matter of taste, but the hotel use case that you mentioned, I would probably have some kind of taxonomy or something that I use so it'd be an entity rather than choosing an image.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
But that makes sense. I can see.
I think that's where it gets into, do you want Drupal to know about this thing and be able to do something with it? I think we get clients asking for reuse way more than it ever actually gets used, which was why we ended up going with the route of just upload these images to this node and there's your gallery. So it's not perfect from a reuse standpoint, but we found that the simplicity of that was what people really wanted, more than they wanted to be able to use this one photo in more than one place. But if you are working with file entities, then you do have much greater opportunity to create an entity browser to allow people to see documents, images, videos, whatever that have been added to the system, and use them in a more sort of Drupal native kind of way.
Yeah, because I know that I've had a few clients, rather large clients, say that they needed imagery use, and then going through setting up media, setting up all that stuff, and then in IMC and one or two of them, and then going back a year later and reviewing it and finding out that there were two images that were used, and they were the two images I reused to show them how to reuse. And then talking to them, finding out if it was a training thing, and then realizing, Oh, yeah, they actually don't reuse anything. So, I ended up ripping out media because it gets rid of that whole browser
Well,
experience,
that
and
was the thing.
they've been happy ever since. Each of them.
I think for true enterprise level asset management, you need a solution like media, where you need to be able to
But that's not
control
what.
usage of
Yeah,
it.
but I agree, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're
Well,
talking
I
about.
know,
Yeah,
and
right.
that's why we scrapped it. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
I built that on
Right.
2 other platforms before I started using Drupal. I built it in .NET and I built it in another platform
Yeah.
called Tango prior to that because we needed that when I was working at North Sales. But the truth is, the way most clients work with galleries and work with images on their website is it's a tiny fraction of use cases where they really need to reuse, other than like things like you described for the healthcare stuff, John, and you, Steve.
Yeah.
But it was, those, at least now in Drupal 7 you can deal with entities and you could add fields to it, you can add taxonomies, you can do that, so you can do much more useful things with what's native to Drupal rather than bolting on a lot of excess stuff.
Yeah, so I guess I would say, and this holds true in general in Drupal and in project management, if your client says that they have a lot of reuse, don't believe them. Make sure that they actually do have a lot of reuse before you go through the trouble of setting up a system like that.
Yeah, and let them know what the implications are.
Yeah.
I mean, because from a workflow standpoint, do they have one place to go to maintain all the things on this page, or does this create a split workflow where you've got to create the gallery, then go create the items, and make sure they're attached back to that gallery? So it creates a lot more complexity, both from a user standpoint and from your own having to actually build it and debug it.
Okay, guys. I think we could put the show to an end. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right,
Sounds good to me.
Everyone in agreement? Say aye.
Aye.
Don't give them a chance to open it back up.
All right. So let's start with you, Jason. Where can people find you? What do you got coming up? I know you have some early birds that are maybe sold out by now.
It's getting close. Actually, I have excuse me. I have a responsive design and typography workshop going on in Boston on March 21st, and half the early bird tickets are gone. So it's a full-day workshop at the General Assembly offices in Boston, and the super early bird tickets are only $2.99 for the whole day, and the coffee's free. So.
Just think about that. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can go to an early bird special. That's fantastic. What a deal! I think you should sign up now.
Yeah, so that'll be fun, and I've actually just been writing up the description of the workshop and talks I'm going to be doing at FITC in Toronto, and the Squares conference in Grapevine, Texas, and another one that's not announced yet that's also going to be in April. So I'm pretty excited about that. We've got new talks coming.
Great. How about you, John?
Just out of curiosity, where's Grapevine, Texas? What's that near?
It's right near Dallas.
Oh, all right. Interesting. For me, I'm here at Oomph 24/7, so you can find me here.
Well, they let him go home to shovel.
Yeah, they let me go home to use my snowblower, which is nice. You can also find me on the social networks at John Picozzi, and as I said, here 24 hours a day at oomphinc.com.
And Nick?
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN, and in person buried under piles and piles of snow. So these are the times when I really like working from home, and thankfully my wife's job is she can work from home too during those days. But we have massive snow mounds and about 2 inches of packed snow / ice down our street. So
I actually got a picture of a coworker's car over. I think it was yesterday. and she lives outside of Boston. And legit, her car was encased in like plow pack and fresh fallen snow. You couldn't even see her car.
Oh yeah, it's fun. That takes 3 or 4 hours to shovel out usually.
She's like, my car is under there somewhere, and I'm like, dude, I would ride the T until spring.
Oh yeah, we went 24 hours without our street getting plowed, so I mean it was pretty crazy. I mean, we still have a pretty good packing of snow and ice on our street. I mean, the main streets are better, but Providence is still a mess.
I need to find out what's going on in Worcester because my street used to be always bare pavement. The last storm we had, second to last storm we had, they didn't plow at all.
That's because the city councilor moved.
Yeah, the politician moved.
Yeah.
That's a simple answer, Nick.
Could be.
Run for city council, your street will be plowed.
That's possible. I mean, we do have a college on the street, so I always assume that's why it was always done so well. But
no, it wasn't the young kids or the schools or anything. No.
Oh, what a bunch of cynics are we.
Okay, so I'm Stephen Cross. I've got a few things I want to mention here that John forgot to do. John, Drupal PVD is coming up next week.
It is.
Is it next
is
week?
going to be on February. Hold on a second. 10th, which is a Tuesday, and for all of our loyal listeners and attendees, we'll actually be going with the second Tuesday of the month from here on out. So we are doing February 10th at Beta Spring, which is in Providence, and you can find out more at drupalpvd.org.
Okay, which forces us over to Nick for the Boston Drupal Meetup, which is on the first Tuesday of the month, right?
Yep, that should be next Tuesday, which is February 3rd.
Yep.
And it usually starts at 6:30, I believe, at the Tank Center at MIT. If you go there, there's a little parking lot called Hayward. It's free parking after 5. Very easy to get to. It's a good meetup. Usually get 20 to 30 people, lightning talks, and we all go out for beer and food after. So definitely a great time. Looking forward to going this month. It's been a couple months. So,
all right. Great. I just want to mention also that the New England Drupalcamp planning has started. We had our first meeting a few weeks back. We have another one coming up shortly, and a weekend announcement or the date announcement is imminent. As soon as we can work out the dates with the venue, those will be coming soon. So keep your eyes and ears open.
Woohoo!
And you can find me at Stephen Cross or parallaxinfotech.com, and we are meeting our 2 o'clock deadline. So have a good week, guys. Talk to you next week.
have a good week.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one.